I am completely exhausted. The 2 long weeks on the road, associated with the launch of a new international office in London, combined with excessive travel, have left me drained. But the worst part was being away from my girls, and the 16-hour journey back home was a real nightmare. Even in first class, I hate being away from my girls and my wife. I always do. But the lifestyle I've created for my family makes work challenging due to the high demand. My energy company has grown and expanded to 12 countries. 5 years ago, I bought out Roger, my partner. These past 5 years have been tough, but at the same time, productive. Finally, I'm ready to relax and enjoy the success. Since I've hired a new president to run the operation while I remain the CEO and owner, I plan to share the good news with the girls as soon as I get home. I'm excited because I'll have more time with my family and friends, and I can get back to normal. Don't get me wrong, I love how my company has grown, but deep down, my goal has always been to spend most of my time watching my girls grow and spending more time with my wife. I'm happy that I've finally had the chance to step back and enjoy the fruits of my labor. At 45, my life may have been stressful, but it has always been filled with love and warmth. I wouldn't change a thing, and now I'm looking forward to the next chapter of my life with my family. Just 30 minutes from home. As my driver navigated through traffic jams, I sat in the back seat of the limousine, relaxing and enjoying a second glass of bourbon that I poured from the side minibar after leaving the airport. As we pulled into the circular driveway, the house appeared quiet. But I knew from experience that in a few minutes, my girls would jump all over their dad, and their mom would greet me with a warm kiss and the promise of a wonderful night in her arms. With dread, I entered an empty house. The only sound was the driver placing my bags in the foyer. I called out, but there was no response. It was strange. The girls were always home when I returned from a trip. I hoped everything was okay. Then I saw an envelope with my name written in her beautiful handwriting. For Jonathan, from your beloved wife. My dearest Jonathan, what an incredible journey we've had as husband and wife. I've treasured every minute of the past 16 years and eagerly look forward to the next 50 I'll spend by your side as your beloved wife. Darling, you know how much I love you, and you are my entire world. You are my life, and I can't live without you. The love you give me is all I desire, and I long to be in your arms every day. I've missed you so much these past 2 weeks, and I can't wait to see you later tonight. There are several reasons for this letter, my dear. First, I want to thank you for being you, for giving me these wonderful 16 years of my life, for being an amazing father to our children, for the wonderful lifestyle you've allowed us to experience, and most importantly, for all the love you constantly pour upon me. The other reason is something I feel I must share, something that has been weighing on me for the past 6 months. It's something I never expected and unfortunately has become a significant part of my life. Everything you've just read is true, and I utter every word from the depths of my heart. What I'm about to tell you is the most difficult thing I've ever done. No matter how much I love you, and I will never stop loving you, I have to confess something. I pray that you understand and that you won't be disappointed in me or leave me for this. I've been in a relationship for the last 6 months. I don't feel any feelings or love for this man, but we have an intimate relationship. The reason I'm telling you now is out of respect and a deep sense of guilt. I can't live with this guilt any longer, and I need you to know that I've been unfaithful. You will never understand it, but I don't feel love for him, just an attraction I can't explain. He does things to me that I can't put into words, and no matter how hard I try, I can't stop myself. He's become my addiction, and I need him in my life. Please believe that I've done everything I can to keep this a secret and not let it affect our lives. Nothing has changed between us since it started, but I understand that it can't end soon. So, it's only fair that you find out everything without secrets, my love. I love and respect you too much to do this. Please understand that my need for him is purely physical, and I won't let being with him interfere with our love or intimacy. I just needed you to know that there's another part of me that I gave to someone else, man, but this part of me has nothing to do with my love for you and the importance of our family. Family is the most important part of my life and my #1 value. Nothing will change that. Our girls are staying over at your mom's place. So, don't worry about them, and they can't wait to see their dad in the morning. I'm with my friend tonight because I wanted to give you some alone time to read my letter and figure out how things will go from here. I'll be home around 10 p.m., and we can continue where we left off, as if nothing has changed because nothing has changed. Dear, just remember, when you read this, that you are the love of my life, and I'm yours until death do us part. I'm yours, darling, and I'll give you everything you desire or need. Thank you for being you and the best husband a girl can dream of. With love always and forever, your devoted wife, Sui. After finishing the letter, I realized that the bourbon glass I was drinking from was now embedded in the wall. I didn't even remember throwing the glass, let alone throwing it with such force that some shards remained in the wall. The ability to make quick decisions is what led to my success in business, and now I was acting out of habit. I grabbed a piece of paper and wrote a response letter, sealed the envelope with her name clearly written on it, and placed it on the table next to the one addressed to me. I put her letter in my pocket, packed some luggage, and went up to the girls' room to pack clothes for a few days as we had a short trip ahead. In the car, I called my supervisor and told him to arrange a corporate plane for a trip to San Francisco, where I would be with my daughters in the near future. At 6:30 that evening, I was in my car, heading to my parents' house to pick up the girls. I have a corporate apartment next to my office in California, where I had already stored a full set of clothes and everything needed for an extended stay. When I arrived at my parents' house, the girls came running to greet me with big smiles on their faces and 100 kisses. They were happy to see me, and I felt like I was smiling for the first time since I got home. Daddy's back. We missed you, Daddy, and we didn't expect to see you until tomorrow. Mom said you wouldn't be back until tomorrow. She was supposed to meet her friend, Jamie, tonight, and we came here to see Grandma and Grandpa, the girls said. I hugged and kissed them, and tears streamed down my face from all that love and the realization that their lives were about to change because of their mother. The name Jamie didn't go unnoticed, and for a while, I stored it in my memory bank. After the girls calmed down, I told them I had a surprise, and we were going on a trip for a few days, flying on the company plane. I promised them a fun and exciting vacation. Convincing the girls was the easiest part. Explaining something to Mom and Dad is a completely different story. They clearly sensed my pain and opposed my taking the girls until I let them read the letter. I explained that I needed some time to get to a safe place to think and plan everything without letting emotions get in the way. I left a letter for Zoe and told them I would call her from the plane. I promised that I would be back in 2 weeks, and it was just a short trip, and not to worry about the girls, as they would be well taken care of. When we boarded the plane, the girls were running up and down the aisle of the 16-seat plane and playing with the flight attendant, whom the girls adored. Jessica was one of our regular attendants, and over the past 2 years, we had become good friends. Spending hours alone on flights can create friendships with the right people. It was 11 at night, and the girls had fallen asleep. The cabin lights were dimmed, and the atmosphere was calm and relaxing. That's when I dialed the home number to speak with Zoe. Jonathan, where are you, honey? Sui, listen attentively, don't interrupt, as I might lose signal at this altitude. I know you've read my letter, and you know the girls are with me. They'll call you in the morning. I'll call you in the next few days to discuss everything. Call Mom and Dad if you need anything. Meanwhile, good night. I hung up before I could respond. The flight went smoothly, and we landed at 1 in the morning. I took the girls to a waiting limousine, and sometime later, I arrived at my house. I tucked them in, kissed them, and 10 minutes later, I fell asleep without even unpacking the bags. We would have time for that tomorrow. Jennifer, 13, and Key, 15, looked at me with curiosity after the call, almost as if the older one had a sad look. Mom betrayed you, Dad. My heart broke hearing her statement. Holding back tears, I simply shook my head and told them to get dressed for dinner. It was the hardest thing I had ever had to do, but I knew with love and support, they could navigate the challenges ahead. That very morning, before the girls woke up, I called my family lawyer, who was on the East Coast and already sitting at his desk. I've known George for 20 years, and we've been through a lot together. So, I told him the story and what I wanted to happen without beating around the bush. George, I need to know what a divorce will look like and how bad it will be. I want to get custody of the kids no matter the cost. There's no reconciliation, therapy, or forgiveness. I want this to end as soon as possible, I said. There was silence on the other end of the line for a long moment. I understood and gave him the chance to digest the news. He was probably as surprised by my words as I was when I read Zoe's letter. "Jonathan, I'm really sorry that this has happened. Kate and I always thought you two were the perfect couple, and I can't understand how she could do this, but I understand what you're asking for. Do you remember when you and Roger founded a company, and he insisted on a prenuptial agreement before agreeing to start a business with you? Do you remember how firm he was about what happened to his last business and how his wife cheated on him? Well, your prenuptial agreement is drafted and up to date. And if you've truly had an affair, you waive your rights to the children and any financial benefits from the marriage for many years. As your company grew, I set up a prenuptial relationship, worked with your corporate lawyers, and transferred most of your assets to a trust of which you were the beneficiary, a house, cars, bank accounts, and investments. Everything is under this untouchable trust. This means that if you violated the marriage contract, you leave the marriage with what you brought in and lose any rights to the children. I know we didn't put all this in place for this purpose, but it seems like everything will work in your favor." "George, you're right. Never in a million years would I have thought she'd betray me, and I completely forgot about the prenuptial agreement, but George, all I have is a letter confessing her infidelity. What more do we need?" I asked. "Well, a confession on video or recording from her would help, along with some photos or a confession from her lover. George, can you take care of this while I'm here in California with the girls? Money doesn't matter, and I want to gather evidence as soon as possible. I don't want this to drag on. There's a name, girls, a guy named Jamie. The only Jamie I know is the tennis instructor at our country club. You can hire a private investigator and suggest starting there. I'm sure he'll get in touch with his lover while I'm away, of course." Jamie, the tennis instructor, was my sworn enemy. They were careless, which made it easy for the private company to conduct the investigation. With my permission, they installed a tracker on Sui's car, audio recording devices inside the car, and video cameras in our house. All the evidence obtained through these devices was legitimate because my company controlled them through a trust. Over the next week, they gathered enough audio and video recordings, as well as her written confession, to proceed with the case. I never saw or heard any of the evidence, as I didn't want those images to haunt me for the rest of my life. Of course, it turned out that Jamie was a womanizer and had to leave his last 2 jobs because he slept with other married women. He was much younger, in great shape, and all the ladies at the club were enamored with him. Zoe was just one of the many wives he had an affair with at the club. Clearly, middle-aged married women were an easy target for this club pro. George called me 5 days after our initial conversation to update me on the progress of the investigation. "Jonathan, we have all the necessary evidence. What do you want us to do? Are you still planning to divorce Zoe?" Without hesitation, I replied, "Draft the divorce documents carefully. I want Zoe to feel some of the pain she caused me and realize how much she messed up. We can sort things out, and I'll work from the perspective of professional tennis. I'll be in touch with you. I plan to be at home and wait for her after she's served, on Tuesday." George asked, "Are you sure you're going to divorce her, Jonathan?" "As we're speaking now, definitely. However, I have to think about the girls and talk to her before signing the papers. It's tough, George, and I hope you never have to go through something like this. I love this woman with all my heart, and I just can't stop loving her. I also hate what she did to us, me and the girls, and I'll never be able to forgive that. Whatever your decision, I'm here to assist. Jonathan, stay in touch, and we'll notify you as soon as she's served." We arrived home on Tuesday morning, around 9 a.m., and the girls were happy to be back home. I told them that after their mom returned from tennis practice, I'd like them to stay in their rooms while their mom and I sorted things out. I could see they were upset and worried, and I did my best to reassure them that everything would be okay. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized, as Zoe remained the mother of my 2 girls. I paid for the first 3 months of a small furnished 2-bedroom apartment that was close to our house and the club. I also bought her a 3-year-old Toyota Sanga for her to drive. I knew I didn't have to give her anything, but I needed my kids to be able to see their mom whenever they wanted. Yes, the Lamborghini and the luxurious lifestyle were already a thing of the past. She gave it all up for some tennis player loser she would never see again, being a decent guy like me. I even got her a job at a country club. Yes, the country club was more than willing to help. As soon as I withdrew my lawsuit, they agreed to part ways with Jamie and assist Zoe with employment if she dropped the lawsuit. Zoe was no longer a member of the country club, but she was now one of the club's waitresses, helping her make ends meet. Since she had no experience or training for any other job, her only option was to get a job as a waitress at a club. I'm sure she felt humiliated when she went from being one of the famous club members to one of their waitresses. That, of course, Jamie abandoned her as soon as the lawsuit began in an attempt to keep his job. So now she had no one to turn to at home. The girls told me their mom cried every night for the love and lifestyle she had sacrificed for some selfish needs. It took all this for her to realize what she had done and how foolish she had been to think her husband would accept her selfish desires. It saddened me how things turned out, and I told the girls that I still loved their mom and that they should love and forgive her. They remained close and saw Mom on weekends. Later that year, when she was picking up the girls, we had our first friendly conversation. She told me she had finally realized what she had done and begged me to forgive her for her actions. "Jonathan, I know we'll never be together again, and you'll never trust me again, but I wanted to apologize and beg you to forgive me. Now I understand what I did and how much I hurt you. My life was completely different, and I was a spoiled woman who didn't care about anyone else. I felt entitled and justified my actions without even thinking about how you would react. Now I know what I've done and what I put you through, and I'm so sorry. If there was a way to get it all back, I would in a heartbeat. Losing you is the worst thing that ever happened to me, and I miss you and love you so much it hurts. I've matured over the past year, and when I look back, I can't believe how foolish I was to give it all up for my selfish and entitled attitude. I'm so remorseful for ruining everything, and I beg you to find the strength to forgive me." Her confession was sincere, and I knew that with time, maybe I could forgive her. I would never stop loving her. She was my life, and I had loved her for so many years. Such love cannot be extinguished overnight. I hoped she had learned her lesson and would remain faithful. When that happened, they let Jamie go from the club, and he eventually moved to South Carolina, where a small club in Hilton had arranged for him to be an assistant to a professional tennis player. It only took him a month before he returned to his old ways and started pursuing married women again. However, the men in South Carolina are a bit less forgiving than in the big city. When they caught him with one of the good guy's wives, it didn't end well. About a month later, a local newspaper reported a crocodile attack on a golf course over the weekend, and the photos showed a 5-meter crocodile's hand. Poor Jamie must have gone for a run by the lake and was accidentally caught by one of these crocodiles. Finally, Jamie stopped being a predator and became prey. During one of my lonely nights, reflecting on our happy family moments, I read a passage that made me think, a man's biggest mistake is giving another man the opportunity to make his wife smile. I will never make that mistake again. Story 2. Right before my wife and I got married, she had a crazy bachelorette party that might have involved things I didn't want to know about. I knew she had wild friends, and until she met me, she partied with them and had a couple of run-ins with the police. As we dated and got to know each other, she told me that getting older was something she took seriously. She didn't want to continue her life on the path she was on. Instead, she wanted to settle down with a responsible man who made her feel loved and happy. I knew I could be that man for her, and I was ready to settle down too. I went out with my friends and had some good times, but it was never as reckless as my wife. I didn't see how excessive drinking, sleeping around, wasting money, or petty crime was going to lead me to a bright future. She looked at the credit card debt she racked up, saw the stark contrast to the lives we lived, and decided to change her ways. I saw her mature and make wiser choices as we spent time together, which made me believe this was the real deal. She was gorgeous, charming, genuine, and growing wiser thanks to me. I was under the impression that I'd met my soulmate and didn't need to be afraid to commit. My wife was ready to take vows with me and start our life together, so we got married in the summer of 2019. 3.5 years later, I was watching a show on my phone while she was in the bathroom. It was a normal Saturday for us. My wife was about to have a girls' night out with her friends, which was happening about 4 to 6 times a month. It was more than when we first got married. At first, she didn't allow these girls back into her life, but that's eventually what happened. They started guilt-tripping her, telling her she was going to be an old maid in her 30s. Even though she eventually gave in and started going out with them again, we had a deep bond that made me think she was a loyal, mature, respectable woman. I was completely wronged. We've been talking about her debt, but she had trouble keeping a job. She was pretty materialistic and found it much harder to earn money than to spend it. Since I was the only one with a steady job, I paid the bills and only allowed her a bit of money to pay towards her debt, get groceries, and go out with her friends. My phone died, so I plugged it in and grabbed my wife's phone to continue watching the show. As soon as I opened it, message notifications started pouring in from men on Craigslist. I read some of them and discovered they were replying to her recent post about her needing help to pay off her credit card debt. I continued reading through the messages and realized she'd been seeing someone else regularly. He told her the last night they spent together was mind-blowing, and he needed to see her again tonight. I threw the phone across the room and just laid there, processing and thinking through what I had just read. I felt like I became a void that might try anything to fill the emptiness. Before my wife came out of the bathroom, I realized I needed to save screenshots of those messages to prove she was at least talking to other men like this. Since I had much better credit, I'd bought our marital house completely on my own. Now that this was happening, I feared the worst possible scenario, which included her taking my home from me. After I took 2 screenshots, sent them to myself, and put her phone back where it was, she entered the room and asked if I was okay. I could tell she was nervous that I might have seen her phone. I said I was fine. I had to catch her meeting another man to get evidence and help my brain accept that this was real. If it was so much worse than her spending time drinking with her irresponsible friends. I arranged for my friend to pick me up and follow her that night. First, we followed her to a Starbucks where she met an anxious-looking man who clearly didn't want anyone to know what they were up to. They got into his car without ordering anything, and we followed them into a large neighborhood to avoid being seen. We circled around until we saw them enter a house. The curtains weren't fully shut, so from across the street, we saw them enter the living room, start making out, and drop onto the couch. I got a little closer to take pictures as my heart pounded and my hands shook. Then I crouch-walked back to the car, and my friend drove me home. During the ride, we discussed the disturbing reality of what was happening to me. My wife was cheating on me with multiple men for money. He started spreading rumors through his phone to her friends, and through them, it spread until it reached my wife's closest and dearest connections. They all bombarded her with degrading insults and slander, telling her she was cut off, and they wouldn't support her terrible and degrading behavior. Even members of her family, like her twin cousins, expressed their disbelief and disappointment. She didn't even try to come home that night or ever again. The embarrassment killed her. She messaged me at 2 a.m. with a heartfelt goodbye in an attempt to get a response out of me or make me feel remorse, but it didn't work. I didn't reply at all because she ultimately betrayed me. I never spoke to her again, not even in court. The last memory I have of her is when she broke down crying after receiving a lecture from the judge about honor and loyalty. OP, I am so sorry your wife proved herself to be a very inconsiderate woman. First, she decided to get into trouble and debt with her friends, and then after marriage, she decided to cheat on you to help pay off that debt. If she really cared or loved you, she would have considered your feelings and the life consequences of her actions. A true and worthy spouse does the best they can to love and respect the love of their life, however they can. When it comes to cheating, you're telling your spouse they don't hold value in your life, and you would be better off without them. Except it's worse because you aren't even directly communicating these things to them. Instead, you're hiding these truths and giving them a false sense of security and love. You did the right thing by exposing your wife for who she really was, obtaining proof, and following through with a divorce. No matter what they say or do, never let a cheater convince you they are worthy of your love again. I wish you the best of luck in love and life, and thank you for sharing your story. Story 3. My wife and I were together for 10 years and had 2 sons under the age of 6. My wife was very close to her aging mother and made sure to include her in our family life, even though she lived in a retirement home. Once a week, we'd all go visit her and bring a collection of our sons' toys for them to show her. Soon thereafter, my wife encouraged the boys to make gifts for their teachers and bus driver with Grandma's help. At the same time, she started taking her mom out to sightsee and spend some one-on-one time together. The routine was she'd get the kids off the bus and then start getting ready to go out. Over time, she started seeing her mom twice a week by herself and every other Sunday with all of us. This was a lot, but even still, her mom would always say how much she missed us. I wondered how that could be if she was taking her out all the time, but I just dismissed the thought. One day, my wife had gotten the kids off the bus and came back inside, cheerful as ever. She skipped upstairs to get ready for another outing with her mom. My boy asked to watch a show, so I grabbed my wife's phone off the charger and noticed several missed calls from my son's bus driver. They were both home safe and sound, so I couldn't imagine why there would be so many missed calls from him. I tried to call him back but found that my wife changed the lock on her phone. Instinct took over as I downloaded an app on my phone to disguise my number as my wife's. I set the call to record before I dialed his number. As soon as he answered, he said, "Hi, love, are you ready for the special date I promised you?" I hung up as soon as I heard this. I went upstairs to find my wife as she got ready, and she looked ravishing. You could tell she was going on a special date. As soon as she saw me, she started downplaying how nice she looked and explained that her mom wanted her to take pride in her appearance no matter what the occasion. I played the recording of the bus driver's voice, and her perfume bottle fell from her hand, smashing into pieces on the floor. She immediately became desperate, begging me to just hold on a minute and listen to her, but I still grabbed the car keys on my way out with the boys. I insisted that she still have AP come get her and never bring her back. She was too panicked to cry, just hyperventilating, insane. She would have nowhere to stay because her home was with me and the boys. I refused to give in to her. I called the bus driver again, this time on speakerphone. He answered in a weary tone. I told him I knew what was going on, and he needed to come pick up my wife because she belonged to him now. He quickly told me to slow down, that he was married and he didn't want to get involved in any drama. My wife's face fell when she realized just how bad her situation was. I just shrugged and hung up while my wife started redialing his number in vain. Just before I left, I heard her leave a voicemail telling him he needed to come pick her up and get her a place to stay because this was all his fault. I suppose she continued calling him late into the night until she found his wife on social media and publicly begged her to tell him to call her because she needed to speak with him urgently. This obviously raised suspicions that led to her discovering the truth. My wife had been dating and sleeping with her husband, our children's bus driver, for an entire year. I had no idea it had been going on at all, let alone for so long. I felt like an idiot for failing to look into my wife's whereabouts sooner, but I truly believed she was spending time with her mom. She was, but only very rarely. AP's wife slandered my wife's name through the school and all over town. AP was so ashamed and willing to do whatever it took to gain his wife's forgiveness. He ghosted my wife and even stopped getting on social media. He tried in vain to prove loyalty to his wife in the hopes things could go back to normal. They never did for any of us. My wife was morally embarrassed that her lover had given her up at the first sign of trouble, and that in her attempts to get his help, she broke his family apart and made things worse for herself. I also jousted her until the visitation schedule was made, and I was awarded primary custody. Her desperate affair cost her reputation, self-confidence, and family. She isn't the same as she was, and I doubt she'll ever be. I'm thankful I'm not the one who has to figure out how to live with myself without my kids because of some stupid mistake that shouldn't have happened. AP even apologized to me, explained that when he started seeing my wife, he was in a bad place in his own marriage. He justified seeing my wife by deciding that he only needed to rely on someone emotionally. Emotional support turned into physical, and then before he knew it, they were living a double life and got caught red-handed. Op, I am sorry your wife cheated on you with your son's bus driver. I can't imagine how she didn't feel extreme guilt and shame for going behind your back with someone that played a role in your children's lives. Not only that, but she used her elderly mother as a cover-up. The time she spent betraying you with this man could have been time spent improving the quality of her mother's life. After this complete disaster was revealed, it's no wonder she experienced grief and slander. It's clear that she didn't consider the potential consequences of seeing another man in the first place. What appeared at first to be her consideration for others and genuine kindness turned out to be the perfect way to hide what she was really doing. I am sorry you were put through this very real nightmare. It is never easy to recover from infidelity, but just continue to remind yourself that you and your children deserve better. Story 4. I, 25-year-old male, and my girlfriend, 24-year-old female, met 3 years ago at a party my fraternity was hosting. Admittedly, I was pretty wild toward the end of my college experience. I felt like I had everything figured out, and the last semester I was in school, I had a huge case of senioritis. When I met my girlfriend, originally I thought it was just going to be a hookup. However, I quickly realized that she and I had something serious between us. We started officially dating, and we were monogamous toward each other. We both graduated and got jobs after college, and about a year after, we decided to move in together. Both of us were new in our fields, and we were doing everything in our power to work our way up. My girlfriend wasn't very happy with her job. She felt like she was being overlooked a lot of the time, and some of the tasks that she was doing seemed disrespectful compared to things some of the other employees were doing. It ended up paying off for her because she was offered a promotion directly by her boss. She had a lot more responsibility, and she got quite a large pay raise alongside it. The initial job description she gave me didn't make it seem like she would be spending a lot of late nights at the office, but every so often, I would get a text message saying that she wouldn't be coming home for dinner. I'd offered to bring her food or stop by and help her out so she wasn't there too late, but she always declined. I really trusted her, so I never thought anything was happening. I believed everything she said when she told me she was working out a couple of months after she got her promotion. She told me that she would be traveling to a conference for work. It was going to be across the country in Los Angeles. There were a ton of things she had always wanted to do, and several of them were in California. We had talked about vacationing there together before, so I suggested that it could be fun for me to take the time off work and join her. She quickly shut that idea down. I was hurt by how fast she rejected it, but she just told me that we couldn't afford the lost time. I moved on from that pretty quickly, and I was just happy for her that she was finally going to get to go. The weeks leading up to her business trip were mostly uneventful. A few days before she left, we got into a small argument about our relationship. She had been staying late at work more often, and I felt like she wasn't being attentive. So, I confronted her about it. She was really defensive and tried to tell me that she just had to work harder than I did to get places in life. Our different upbringings have been a point of contention with us in the past, but I hated when she brought it up. I have been lucky enough to have familial connections in my industry. I grew up in an upper-class household, and I was able to afford to go to good schools. I was a legacy in my fraternity, and I had plenty of contacts thanks to my family. My girlfriend didn't have any of that, and she would often throw it in my face as if I didn't deserve any of the accomplishments I'd made. After the argument, things were a little awkward, but she promised me that we would talk more about it when she got back from her trip. I told myself that I was just going to forget about it and let her enjoy her time while she was there. Before she left, she told me that she would call me every night that she was in California. I had actually been looking forward to it because I was interested to know what she was getting up to. The first night, she called me and gave me a rundown of her entire day. She was somewhat jet-lagged and exhausted from the plane ride, so there wasn't much to report. Though on the second day, I was waiting by the phone at the time we set aside to call, and she never reached out. I ended up texting her to see what was going on, but she didn't reply until the morning. She told me she passed out and didn't set an alarm. I accepted that she had given me no reason to doubt that story, so I believed it once again. The following night, she never called me. I felt kind of foolish just waiting by the phone for her to reach out. I ended up getting an invite to a party a friend was throwing, so I went to that instead. Aside from texting every so often, I didn't talk to her for the entire 5 days she was in California. I was excited for her to come home, but at the same time, I knew that we were going to have a difficult conversation when she finally got back. It almost seemed like she didn't want anything to do with me. The distance between us seemed to have tripled in the short time she was gone. I tried to talk to her about it, but she just didn't want to talk. It was incredibly frustrating trying to deal with her when she was putting so little effort into communicating, so I talked to the internet to try to figure out what was going on. From everything I could gather, it seemed to be a logical conclusion that something might have happened with another person outside of our relationship. I didn't want to believe that she was cheating on me, but I needed to at least rule that out. I didn't know how to ask her about it, so the first chance I had to look through her phone, I took it. We knew each other's passwords, so it wasn't hard getting in. The difficult part was trying to figure out what I was looking for. I looked through her pictures, and I didn't see anything. I didn't find anything in her recent messages that was alarming. I ended up searching through the messages for some keywords that might tip off anything serious going on. When I typed in the word together, a lot of different messages came up. However, I was able to read from the snippets of text that there was somebody who had recently messaged her about wanting to be together. I clicked on the messages and I read through all of them. I didn't know the man she had been texting, but from what I could gather, he was a coworker. Apparently, they had been sleeping together for some time. The man was asking her when she was going to leave me. I didn't know if she had told him that she planned to or if he was just assuming that she would. I was going to make it a lot easier for her and break up with her. It was clear that she didn't want me to go to California with her because she planned on spending the week with him. It all made sense why she hadn't been available to talk to me during that time. I felt heartbroken initially. That was the last thing I expected her to do, and I was shocked to find out she was cheating. When I read about other people in similar situations online, I assumed that it just wouldn't happen to me, but I was wrong. From their messages, I was able to glean that she and her affair partner had been fooling around on the job. She had done me dirty, so I wanted to make things a little more difficult for her. I knew how hard she worked to get where she was in her company, so I knew how hard it would be for her to lose it all. A couple of nights passed, and I played it cool. I stopped pressuring her to talk about the distance between us, and I just accepted it. One evening, she texted me at 4:30 p.m. telling me that she was going to be staying late at work. I knew that was her basically saying she was staying late at work to sleep with this man. I replied and told her that it was okay and that I would put a plate aside for her in the microwave for her to heat up. Of course, I took that opportunity to go find proof that she was cheating on me. No employer wanted to work with people that were having sex in the offices, so I thought if I could get some evidence, I could show it to her boss. When I walked into the building, it was pretty much empty aside from a janitor. I had to lie and tell him that I was an employee that had forgotten their keys. My girlfriend's office was practically empty, though. After a minute of snooping, I was able to find her and her affair partner in what was very clearly her boss's office. If I had been worried that their relationship wasn't going to get them both fired before, I knew right away that proof of them sleeping together in his office would. I was as quiet as I had ever been while I took a video and a couple of pictures of them. I was able to get the boss's information through the company's website. I reached out to him, and after a few days, he contacted me and told me he wanted to see the evidence that I had mentioned. I brought it to his office in the middle of a workday where my girlfriend saw me walk in and showed him. My girlfriend was surprised to see me, so she knocked on her boss's door and asked me what I was doing there while trying to pull me in for a friendly hug. Her boss just glared at her and asked her if she could take a seat before dismissing me from the office. I stood on the outside of the door for a minute while I listened to him fire her. She stormed out and stood in front of me, completely shocked. I doubt she had any idea I even knew about the affair before that. I ended things with her right there in front of all of her coworkers, and I told her that I wanted her out of the apartment. She tried to play it off like it was her decision because she wanted to be with the other man anyway. If that were truly the case, why wouldn't she have just left me to begin with? It's been about 6 months since all of that happened, and I haven't heard from her. We have a lot of mutual friends from college, and they have told me that she is actively looking for a job. She's been doing online insurance sales in the meantime, which is absolutely nothing she planned to do. As far as they know, she's also single, so I guess it didn't work out with the other guy. OP, sorry you had to go through something like this. It really sounds like you were putting in the effort to try and make the relationship work when she wasn't putting any in. Her distance in the relationship was definitely because of what she had with the other guy. I will never understand why people pursue another person when they're in a relationship, especially if they really want to be with the other person. It's okay to break up with somebody if you are no longer in love with them, but cheating on them and leading them to believe the relationship is more than it is awful. I hope that you're able to move past this and find somebody who does really value you and won't throw away what you guys have. I wish you the best of luck moving forward. Story 5. I realized that we came from completely different backgrounds in regard to our families. Mine was much more traditional, not necessarily in a good way. We weren't super close. I had a father who was not very involved because he thought that child rearing was a woman's job. Her family was everything I wished mine was like growing up. She had several brothers and sisters. Her parents were always involved in her life, and they all genuinely seemed to enjoy being around each other. I was welcomed into their family with open arms, and I had never been happier. My wife's involvement with her family was something I admired, and I hoped to be close to them as well. Her youngest sister was 8 years younger than her, and she was probably one of the family members she was the least close with because of the age gap. So when her sister reached out about needing a place to stay, my wife welcomed her. She thought it would be a good opportunity for them to spend time together and bond in ways that she had with her other siblings. Her sister was going through a tough time in her life. Her boyfriend, whom she had been with for years, had been injured at work and couldn't go back. He was receiving disability payments, but it was only a portion of his salary, and they were having trouble paying the bills. They were just going to stay with us until they knew what to do about moving into a new place and getting new jobs. Everything was great at first. I loved seeing my wife with her sister. I could tell that they were both happy to have the time together. I also really enjoyed spending time with her boyfriend. He was a lot younger than me, but we still had a lot in common. The trouble started when my sister-in-law found a job, and her boyfriend didn't. My wife was a stay-at-home mom, and it was in the middle of the school year, so she was home alone with him for about 8 hours every day. Never in a million years did I think that they would be sleeping together during that time. The first thing I noticed that clued me into their relationship was finding a pair of boxers in my bedroom that didn't belong to me. I asked my wife about it, insinuating that there was only one other man in the house. She laughed it off and told me that it was probably something that she dropped on the floor when she was doing laundry. I wasn't entirely satisfied with that answer, but I didn't have anything else to prove that she was being unfaithful. A couple of weeks went by, and nothing else happened. I was starting to think that I was overreacting when I saw the boxers, but then I smelled his cologne on my pillow. It's one of those things where you know that you're not wrong, but it's difficult to prove. I sleep on that pillow every night. I know what it smells like. When I told my wife that it smelled like another man, she thought that I was hallucinating. She assumed that I had been paranoid and was thinking of anything that would align with my story. My gut was telling me that something was wrong, so I needed to prove it. The next day, I installed a nanny cam in her bedroom to see if I could catch her in the act. Surprisingly, it didn't take long before I got the evidence that I needed. Just 2 days after the installation, when I checked the footage, I saw my wife in bed with her sister's boyfriend. Divorce was the only option for us after I saw that. I had no intention of trying to reconcile what we had before this. Honestly, I wanted to hurt her the way that she hurt me too. She was so happy to be getting closer to her sister, and I was going to ruin that. When I told her sister, I knew that it would ruin her relationship with her entire family, and I didn't care. She was ruining someone's life, and she needed to suffer the consequences of that. On top of doing that, her sister's boyfriend had been claiming disability after his work accident, but I highly suspected that it was fraud. I didn't say anything when I noticed it at first. I didn't think it was any of my business, and I liked the guy. However, he slept with my wife, so I thought it would be good to report him. I called the Social Security offices and reported him for suspected disability fraud, which they told me they would be promptly investigating. After that was done, I texted my sister-in-law and told her that we were all going out to dinner and to meet at a restaurant. While we were there and away from the others, I showed her the evidence that I had. I explained how I had been suspecting something for a while and that I needed to get the evidence for myself. She was hysterical when I showed her. She trusted her boyfriend with all of her heart, and she trusted her sister even more. When she calmed down, we both went back to my house where I confronted my wife about what happened. My sister-in-law was standing behind me, sobbing the whole time. It was completely inexcusable, and she couldn't even come up with anything to say other than saying it didn't mean anything. I helped my sister-in-law pack her things so I could drive her to her mother's house. She didn't want to be around either of them, which was understandable. When I got back home, my wife was waiting for me. She was furious with me for some reason, claiming that I had no right to tell her sister about the affair that I caught. She also said that I had unlawfully gained the footage of their affair and demanded I turn it over to her. Of course, I refused to do that because it was evidence that I would need for our divorce. When I told her that, she practically begged me to forgive her. She didn't want a divorce because that would mean that I wouldn't be there to support her anymore. I told her that I was going to be staying with my brother and that I would give her a week before she should be out of the house. It was all in my name, and she had no claim to it otherwise. On top of that, I told her that she needed to make sure her new boyfriend was out of the house too. I was afraid that if I had to see him, I might attack him. Several weeks went by, and my wife had moved out of the house to stay with her aunt. None of her family wanted anything to do with her after what she did. I figured they might take her back at some point, but they would need a lot of time, and their relationships would never be the same. The boyfriend ended up having to go back to work because the Social Security office deemed him fit to do so. I got a hateful voicemail from him, complaining about how vile he thought I was for reporting him to the office. I just ignored it.my wife and I ended up getting divorced. The funny thing is, I think I am more involved with her family than she is. I didn't want to take my children away from that side of their family, so I stayed in the same neighborhood, just in a different house. They're all still very upset about what she did and are trying to find ways to move on. As for me, I don't know how to date anymore. Everyone is telling me that it's about time I start trying again, but I'm honestly afraid that something similar is going to happen. I don't want to put myself out there again only to have somebody betray me like this. OP, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. The fact that your wife cheated on you with her sister's partner is upsetting. You're supposed to be able to trust your family, and your wife completely disregarded that. She was extremely selfish when she slept with the boyfriend. I think you did the right thing by telling your sister-in-law. From what it sounds like, she was working really hard to support the life she had with her boyfriend, and he was cheating on her. Both of you deserve so much better than the partners you had. I think it's great that you're still in touch with her family, especially knowing that she is barely in touch with them. I really hope that you and your former sister-in-law can find ways to move past this and find people that truly cherish and respect you both.